I'm Adam Epstein. You're listening to AWOD Radio. Doing a little college basketball now on The Fan. So AP Top 25 came out yesterday, and Arkansas is number 10 at 9-1. Arizona at 9-8-1. Kansas Jayhawks at 8-9-1. Texas at 7. They're 7-1 on the season. Tennessee with a big victory over Maryland the other night. They're 9-1 on the season. 5 is Houston. They travel to John Paul Jones Arena this weekend to face off against UVA. Alabama's at 4. UConn, strong team this year, at 3. They're 11-0. UVA sits at 2. And Purdue, undefeated. They're your number 1 team in college basketball right now. And joining me on the Hadid Mercer Rug Cleaning Hotline is Marcus Washington. Mook, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, man, great time of year. We're about to get into conference play, but this weekend definitely gives us a little going away present from the non-conference with UVA and Houston. Cannot wait for that 2 p.m. tip.
Absolutely, man, and around the ACC we go. But before we talk about Tech and UVA, let's touch on the Blue Devils. How is Duke? I mean, no Coach K, first season of Shire here, 10-2 on the season. Kyle Filipowski leads them in rebounds and points this season. How good are the Blue Devils?
Well, they're very good, and they're developing, and that's been the great thing that Shire's been able to do, and almost a little bit shocking because we did have questions. What was it going to be like without Mike Krzyzewski? But think about this. The Blue Devils have played 3 of the top teams in the Big Ten. They've walked away with 2 wins in those, a really good win over Ohio State, a really good win over Iowa. And I think what we've also seen, we talk about the young guys all the time, right? And we sort of forget about Jeremy Roach. What you're seeing in Roach is that his offensive game on the college level is starting to develop. It's not consistent enough yet, but we saw what he can do in that Iowa game. As much we talk about Filipowski and Dariq Whitehead, I want to tell you, the guy to watch on there is the development of Tyrese Proctor for Duke. If he can become a solid decision maker along with Roach, you get that strong 2 primary ball handler on the floor at the same time for the Blue Devils, and then that makes Filipowski even better. It allows Dariq Whitehead to continue to develop because he got a slow start because of injury, and Derek Lively. So Duke has surprised me in a way, not that they're winning, but they're as far ahead as they are with the roster that they have and a new coach.
I'm Adam Epstein. You're listening to AWOD Radio here on the new Sports Radio 910 The Fan, now at 105.1 FM. Got you covered on both ends of the dial, joined by Making the Cut with Mook right now, Marcus Washington. You can follow him on Twitter. He joins me on the Hadid Mercer Rug Cleaning Hotline. Follow him on Twitter, MTC with Mook. All right, so we talked about the Blue Devils. How about the Tar Heels? So last season they advanced the NCAA title a game, but they're struggling this year, 6-4, and I feel like I need to keep reminding my audience that as great as that run was last year and as magical as it was last season, they were a bubble team in February. So it's not like they're some super college basketball team. They just got hot. How do you feel about this year's squad?
And what you just said, what we've seen out of North Carolina is they are closer to being the team that they were up to February of last year than what they were in March. And part of it is they do miss Brady Manek in the sense that if you talk about that March run, we talk so much about Caleb Love. But what Manek could do was he was a catch-and-shoot guy. He could finish over contests. He could do those things. And heck, in the Final Four, his defense on Banchero was key to them winning that game. Pete Nance is good. He's just a different type of player. He needs room to get the three-pointer off. Usually it comes on a swing and a reverse to get it off. So those 2 guys, if you look at the numbers, you say, well, they're kind of the same, but how they play and how they get off, especially from the perimeter, is different. But what we've seen out of Caleb Love is what has killed North Carolina so far. People keep saying, Hubert Davis, you're running NBA sets. That's not what it is. All kinds of colleges run sets to try to get their guys in space. What happens with Caleb Love is he holds the ball. North Carolina is not playing fast enough. When he holds the ball, the offense gets stagnant, and you see 2 guys in action and 3 guys standing, and that is killing the Tar Heels. They're also not pushing the ball on opponent misses. You know, remember, under Roy, under Dean. They push the ball on misses and makes. Now, North Carolina is just too satisfied with walking the ball up, in part because they don't have depth. And I do think sometimes the starting five plays at a pace to try to preserve themselves as opposed to a pace that is the most beneficial for this team, which is why you've seen them struggle so much on offense. They have to trust the system. They have to trust the development of the bench. They have to get back out to running, not playing so much setup offense, getting transition baskets in secondary transition. That will raise the shooting percentage. You will see the team get better. You'll see that team that you saw in March, because that's how they played in March, because they weren't concerned about getting tired. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing the struggle in the beginning of this season is how they are playing. I just don't think they're engaged on winning first as much as it is preserving myself to play as many minutes as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue when you've got 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys that are going to end up in the NBA. I mean, I feel like Caleb Love's not just going to make the NBA, but be a star, but at the same time, maybe he's not the type of player that the Tar Heels need in college basketball. You got to be less selfish. Let's move over to Miami. Coach Larrañaga's done it again, 10-1 on the season, number 25 in the AP polls right now. And then Wong and Miller are just so darn good. How good is this team at Miami?
Well, they are very good in college basketball. If you can have a big three, and in the way they do with Wong and Miller, as you mentioned, and then Omier, they can beat any team. They can win any night in the ACC. I still need to see more than them. Their 2 conference wins earlier come against Louisville and NC State. That just doesn't move the needle for me, and it hasn't gotten that image of their loss to Maryland out of my head. I just need to see more of this team, both offensively and especially defensively. But we know Coach L, and we know once they get into the conference season, those 3 will be able to carry them to being in the top half, probably the top 4 of the ACC. But they have to show more on the nights when they've played against quality opponents. Now, the schedule hasn't shown them a lot of quality opponents, but definitely we will find out next week, because next week on December 20th, they play UVA. And if UVA can be healthy and have Beekman back, we're going to see probably the stiffest test they've had since that Maryland game.
Absolutely. Joined by Marcus Washington on the Hadid Mercer Rug Cleaning Hotline, making the cut with Mook. You can follow him on social media, MTC with Mook, college basketball reporter in the D.C., Maryland area. So UVA and Tech, off to great starts, but I got to ask you the tough question. If UVA and Tech played today, who would win and why?
If Virginia is fully healthy, I think Virginia will. They have a lot of similarities in their personnel and how they play. Virginia Tech is a little bit better offensively. Virginia had flashed this dynamic offense until the last 2 games. Florida State and JMU, they really struggle with their offense. But I do think that they can do enough to win if that game is in Charlottesville. That game is in Blacksburg. Let me tell you, that is one of the best home courts in the ACC. And Virginia Tech could have enough to beat them in there, especially with Sean Padula. Look, Padula gets built up as this Johnny Driveway kid. He is not a Johnny Driveway. He is a straight player that now we're starting to see a little bit of that Villanova guard in him. If you looked at the Oklahoma State game, he started taking Oklahoma State to the post the way Jalen Brunson and Colin Gillespie used to. That guy can run an offense. He can shoot the ball. And if Virginia Tech can continue getting a good game, I know he didn't have a good game against Oklahoma State out of Hunter Couture. When you add that to Justin Mutz and Grant Basile, that's a tough team to beat. That's one of those 50-50 games, depending on where the game is played and what's the health of Virginia.
Yeah, and the 3-point percentage for either team. The 2 teams will meet at UVA on January 18th, and then at Virginia Tech on February 4th. And it's just great to have 2 awesome college basketball programs right here in the state of Virginia. So let's get to the big matchup. Saturday, 2 p.m., ESPN 2. Houston, number 5, comes to the John Paul Jones Arena against number 2 UVA. Does UVA need Reese Beekman to play this game for them to have a chance?
Yeah, I do think for them to play well and not necessarily have a chance to play well, they do need Beekman. Now, I do think that they can beat Houston without Beekman if it's the right type of game. You look how Houston is built. They are a multiple effort defense similar to what we see out of Baylor. Their offense is an acquired taste. Yes, they have guys who have a potential to be a dude. Marcus Sasser, Jamal Sheed, Trayvon Mark. But it might come down to Jerice Walker, who almost hits that three-pointer around about 40% clip. If Virginia makes this a knuckle fight, we're going to go possession by possession. Even without Beekman, they will have a chance at the end to win this game. And as Kahii Clark also becomes a big factor for the Cavaliers if they don't have Beekman, because you can't just box score dumpster dive with him in a game like this. It's going to be, can Clark get him into the offense at a proper time in the shot clock? Don't turn the ball over. Is he getting it to the right guys in the right position? Some of those things that don't show up in the box score. If he does that, Virginia's going to be competitive down the line because their defense will keep them in this game. And again, I'm just not sold on that Houston offense quite yet. A lot of individual talent, but we don't always see that individual talent look like they're in this free-flow rhythm of a game.
Mook, great stuff as always. Follow him on Twitter, MTC with Mook, and you can read his work on mtcwithmook.com. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, my man.
Yep, you're listening to AWOD